Okay, end of the road here. This is the final result, and I'm happy with it. I think that the finish is consistent with a shell briar that had been polished a fair amount in its life, and you can tell that by the condition of the nomenclature as well as the kind of the glassiness of it. And here's what I'm talking about. A little bit ago I used, I think it was this pipe, to show a shell, and this is a little more black and a little more craggy, and it's also much more sharp, as you can see. Well, this is how they look when they get messed with very little. Smoked little, handled little, buffed little. Once upon a time, when there were smoke shops on every corner, it was very common, as you'd go in to buy your weekly can of tobacco, the proprietor would hold out his hand and you'd hand him your pipe, and he'd take it in the back and shine it up for you. Well, you do that every week for years on end, and they'd get, even the sandblast ones would get a little glassy. So here's a good example of that. This is a 1949 LB that is in the same kind of shiny condition that the new, well, recently new to us, this ES is. So you can compare the two of these in terms of color and texture and all the various things you can see here to get an idea of how well we did it, because this pipe was has never been touched. It's my own, it's my property, and it was bought 30 odd years ago and has never been refinished. So the previous owner had polished it up a lot. But anyway, I thought this is more apples to apples than what you saw before, when you might look at this one and say, wait a minute, this is a little more red and a little more shiny and glassy than the other one. And I just wanted to address that. So all turned out well. And I wanted to mention briefly this entire business about back from the brink. What that means is that usually if you get a good stumble and break the stem or bite through it, and you restem it, and if you mess up the stumble in some way, you get it refinished and you reuse the stem that's already on there because it's in good shape. Rarely is it worth going after and fixing both halves, we'll call it halves, that usually if both the stem are in bad and the bowl are in bad shape, unless it's a unusual piece, a collectible piece, it just isn't worth going after it and doing all this work. In this case, it's the exception in that Dunhill didn't make many of these. This is a good specimen. It's completely sound and worth it. So it was on its way to a trash bin somewhere. It had been bleached out with some chemical, and you saw the stem was chewed through. It would have probably ended up in a junk drawer and finally just, tossed at some point. So it was at the brink of extinction, and now we've got it back in circulation. And it's arguably, once I fix this little pit inside the chamber, it's arguably had its odometer set back to 0. It can now be smoked for 100 years if you take care of it. So it's very satisfying to do stuff like that. And that's it for now. As always, I got more stuff in the batting circle. Is that what they call it in baseball? The staging area? Warm-up circle, I think they call it. Anyhow, and one of them is a Dunhill Magnum pipe, which you very rarely see. Only a handful of those were ever made. They're almost 100 years old, And this one has an unusual problem that will be challenging to fix, and it's a procedure that I have not shown even in passing anywhere in this video series. So totally new material, a remarkable specimen as the patient. It should be fun. So that's it. Until later.